After returning home for the first time in 3 years, Mary saw her eldest son, Tom, and her sister-in-law, Sarah, and remarked, "Isn't it wonderful, Mom? Dad got transferred overseas, and we were all feeling a bit lonely, but then Tom came back." "Yeah." Mary weakly smiled and nodded, which seemed to make me suspicious as she asked, "What's wrong? You seem down, Mom. Is something bothering you? I'm here to listen if you need to talk." "It's nothing. It's not something you need to worry about," I replied with the best smile I could muster. Mary decided to stay for a while. "I'm looking forward to it." When I said that, Mary blushed. "If there's anything troubling you, I'll be here to help you, Mom," and said enthusiastically, "Is Mary becoming a school teacher? That's amazing. You must be so smart." Sarah clapped her hands exaggeratedly and praised Mary. That night, as I was about to close the door to the storage room, "Why are you closing it?" she asked, tilting her head in confusion. The door to the rarely used storage room is usually left open. She probably couldn't think of a reason why it would need to be closed, even if there was a need to enter the storage room. "I always sleep here. It doesn't have a window, but I need to close it to keep it from getting too cold," I said, showing the inside of the storage room to my daughter. In the middle of the empty space, without windows or a ventilation fan, there's a makeshift bed. "Mom, have you lost weight recently? Are you okay? You seem a bit haggard." "It's okay. It's just the usual. And please, keep this a secret from Jim. I don't want to unnecessarily worry him. It's late now, so you should use my room tonight." Mary, sensing something unsettling from my words, ran upstairs and called out, "Tom, I need to talk to you." My name is Susan, 55 years old. I'm just an ordinary housewife. My 2 children are independent, and I live with my husband, who has been working away from home since last year, leaving me alone at home. When the children were young, the house was always filled with laughter and vibrant energy, but now that I'm alone, it feels too quiet and a bit lonely. One day, after a long time without contact, my eldest son, Tom, expressed his desire to live with his sister-in-law and me, which brought a sense of joy to my heart that had been dimming. "Are you sure? You're newlyweds. Shouldn't you cherish your time together with Sarah a bit more?" I said over the phone, expressing concern for my son, but deep down, I was overjoyed. "Sarah wants to live with you too. So, you don't have to worry about me." Tom had grown up mentally during the time we hadn't seen each other, which impressed me. And so, the 3 of us, Tom, Sarah, and I, began living together. I had hoped for a return to the days when the family was united in laughter, but that hope crumbled. Sarah, my sister-in-law, was very assertive and wouldn't listen to me at all. I didn't want to impose my opinions unilaterally for fear of causing a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issue. Yet, it felt like Sarah had built an invisible wall between us, making it impossible to feel the ideal family atmosphere. I quickly realized why the couple, who had never visited home since their marriage, suddenly wanted to live with me. Tom, working as a day trader, spends his days cooped up in a room, staring at the computer screen. I may not understand the specifics, but it seems he provides accurate information and acts as a mediator for people engaged in stock investments and foreign exchange transactions, constantly checking the economic trends. However, it doesn't seem like he's earning much, as Tom often emerges from his room with dark circles under his eyes and a deep sigh, indicating the results aren't good. On the other hand, Sarah has been posting images and videos she takes herself on the latest social media platforms, constantly broadcasting information. She leaves the house at will and returns late at night, leaving me to wonder where she's been and what she's been doing. She claims to be a popular influencer, but as someone who doesn't use the internet much, I have no idea what she's talking about. Both boast about making a substantial income, but considering they ask me for an allowance every month, it's clear their financial situation is quite dire. In other words, their desire to live with me wasn't out of consideration for my old age or filial piety, but rather for financial stability. Tom and Sarah seem to think of me as nothing more than a cash cow. Around the time I realized their true intentions, my relationship with Sarah started to deteriorate into constant arguments. One day, as usual, Sarah went out to play and returned home in a taxi at 1 a.m., singing loudly. "Susan, sorry, but can you pay for the taxi?" I really wanted to yell at her that I'm not her ATM, but fearing to disturb the neighbors, I quickly paid the taxi fare. "What were you doing out so late?" "You're always so nosy." "I'm a celebrity, so I have social obligations, you know. It's strange to come home late every night. It would help if you could let me know in advance." "I don't have time for that. Middle-aged women who don't understand should just keep out of it." Sarah, angry, glared at me and tried to slap my cheek, but I managed to dodge it at the last moment. "You're dangerous. If you dislike me that much, why don't you just leave this house?" Sarah made an annoyed face and headed towards her room. "Wait a minute. We're not done talking." I tried to grab Sarah's arm as she was about to leave. Then Sarah shook off my hand and, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, threw herself into the corner of the room where the stored tissues were piled. "Ouch! Why do you have to be so mean, Susan? It hurts." Even though she clearly hadn't hit anything, Sarah pretended to rub her elbow in pain. Hearing the commotion, Tom came running down the stairs. "What's going on? What happened?" "Tom, you're still awake. You should rest soon. Are you okay for tomorrow?" Worried about my son who had been staring at the computer for work, I asked about his well-being. But ignoring his mother's concern, Tom rushed to the fallen Sarah. "Are you okay? What did Mom do to you?" "Susan is really terrible. I'm just tired from coming back from work, and she suddenly pushed me without even asking." The room was in disarray with tissue boxes scattered everywhere, and Tom glared at me angrily, taking Sarah's word for it. "Is that true? Why would you do something so awful?" "That's not true. I didn't do anything. Sarah threw herself into that corner. And she was the one who tried to hit me first." I calmly rebutted, but Tom seemed to take my response as an excuse, hugging Sarah tightly. "It's okay, Sarah. I'll protect you. If anything happens, I'll kick Mom out," he declared strongly. "Wait a minute. That makes it sound like I'm entirely at fault. Why won't you listen to both sides equally?" "Sarah wouldn't lie. It's true she comes home late every day because she has many commitments as an influencer. It's wrong that you don't even try to understand that." "So you're saying everything is my fault?" As Tom glared at me again, Sarah smirked maliciously. Sarah, having completely won Tom's trust, settled into the house with a haughty attitude. I wake up at 5 a.m. every day to make breakfast. Then I do the laundry, but even after 8 a.m., the two of them are still snoring and don't wake up. Thinking they must be tired from work, I quietly finish breakfast alone. But at 9 a.m., while I'm cleaning the living room, Sarah storms in, yelling, "Susan, that's terrible. Why didn't you wake me up?" I stop the vacuum cleaner and try to make sense of what Sarah is saying. "Sarah, what are you so angry about?" Sarah, frustrated by the situation not going her way, said, I wanted to wake up by 8 a.m. Do you understand what a morning routine is? I'm an influencer and I live stream every morning. But this morning I overslept and couldn't do anything. How are you going to make up for this? I'm at a loss here. You never asked me to wake you up. Don't make excuses. Because of Susan, I might lose a lot of fans. Faced with Sarah's sudden outburst in the morning, all I could do was give a wry smile. Then Tom, yawning, came down. What's going on? Did Mom do something again this morning? Listen, Tom. Susan did something terrible. Sarah went on to falsely tell Tom that I was jealous of her being a popular influencer and deliberately didn't wake her up, making up a story out of thin air. Upon hearing this, Tom looked at me and said, "Just as I thought. It's exactly the kind of underhanded thing I'd expect from Mom." He completely sided with Sarah, showing no interest in hearing my side of the story. I dramatically held my head and said, "I was never asked by Sarah to wake her up. So why am I the one getting yelled at?" I'm not lying. I told you many times yesterday, didn't I? I have to be up early, so please wake me up at 6 a.m. Tom, it's true. Tears were brimming in Sarah's eyes. I was so astounded by her acting skills that my anger turned into sheer disbelief. Fooled by Sarah's portrayal of the vulnerable sister-in-law, Tom gently stroked her head and said, "You've had it tough. I'll have a stern word with Mom later." Thank you, Tom. I really love you. Then in front of me, the two of them embraced each other tightly. I let out a deep sigh and said firmly, "Keep it up until tomorrow then. If you dislike me that much, the two of you can go wherever you please." And said firmly. Then Sarah stood up, dramatically ruffling her hair. I can't stand this life anymore. I can't bear to live in the same space and breathe the same air as Susan forever." Is that so? I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were suffering that much. Tom said, hugging Sarah again. That settles it then. If you two want to leave this house, I won't stop you. What happens to you is none of my concern. Sarah burst into laughter. No, you got it wrong. It's not us who should be leaving, but you, Susan. Why should I leave? This is my house. I countered in a calm tone. Then how about this? Mom can stay in the storage room. I was dumbfounded by Tom's bizarre suggestion. What? Do you even understand what you're saying? Why should I, the mother, have to confine myself to the storage room? Sarah doesn't want to breathe the same air as you, Mom. And we're not planning to leave. So, there's only one solution. Mom stays in the storage room, and everything's resolved. I'll say it again, this house was built by Jim and me. It's not me who should be leaving, but you too. Then Sarah picked up a chair and slammed it onto the floor, taking in a deep breath. Please, I'm sorry. Susan, I'll do the cleaning and cooking for you. Please don't hit me. She screamed loud enough for the neighbors to hear, pretending to seek help while smirking in a way that clearly mocked me. I wanted to cry, but I refused to give in to such foolishness. Do you really want it to be known around the neighborhood that you harass me every day? You shouldn't underestimate my influence. Sarah spoke condescendingly, as if she had one. I laughed it off and said, Go ahead. It's well known around here that you're a frivolous daughter-in-law. You might not know, but everyone's talking. I took a defiant stance to encourage myself. Sarah bit her lip in frustration, unable to counter any further. Tom came to Sarah's defense. "Then I'll tell Dad," he said in a suppressed, low voice, powerful enough to halt my momentum. If I think about it calmly, it is clear that I am not at fault. It was clear that I wasn't at fault, facing unreasonable demands from Sarah and Tom, with no reason for me to be criticized. Yet, as soon as Jim's name was mentioned, my will to argue drained away. Jim is currently enthusiastic about his first overseas assignment, holding an important position that shouldn't be burdened with personal issues. Although we live apart, we keep in touch daily by phone, never once discussing the turmoil at home. I want Jim to focus solely on his work, not to be dragged down by unnecessary matters. It seems they had pinpointed my weakness. Tom sneered maliciously, and despite him being my son, I felt a sense of fear. Sensing my clearly distressed state, Sarah also sneered along with Tom, saying, "It turns out Susan's weakness is Jim. That's hilarious." She laughed out loud, clapping her hands. "Then make a promise. From today, you will confine yourself to the storage room. And you will never speak rudely to me again. You understand what will happen if you make me feel even slightly uncomfortable, right?" Sarah intended to manipulate me by holding my husband as a hostage. "I understand. I don't intend to cause you any more trouble, and from today, I will confine myself to the storage room. This is the consequence of all the harassment you've done to Sarah. It's your own fault." Tom delivered the final blow to my already shattered spirit. From that day, my room was decided to be the storage room. I was only allowed to leave the storage room when tasked with household chores like preparing meals and doing laundry. Otherwise, I was relegated to this sunless space. Although not locked in from the outside, any attempt to step out was met with Sarah's vigilant supervision. "I'll tell Jim," she would threaten. When we started running low on supplies, I was allowed to go out. "Susan, we're running low on food, so could you go buy some? And while you're at it, withdrawing a substantial amount of money would be helpful." Sarah likely thought she had hired a convenient housekeeper who would work to her every whim. Her attitude became more unreasonable by the day. Walking through the neighborhood with shopping bags, I would hear, "You haven't been seen around lately. Are you doing okay? Have you lost weight? Your complexion looks poor." The genuine concern from my fellow housewives in the neighborhood was touching, and I found myself unable to stop the tears. Then one day, as I was confined to the storage room, "You have a visitor. Looks like it's going to be a real hassle," Sarah said with a frown. Wondering who it could be, I went to the front door to find. "Mom, are you okay?" My daughter Mary was waving with the same carefree smile she had as a child. "Mary, you should at least call before coming home," I complained, tears streaming down my face. "Sorry, but I did call several times." No one answered. I remembered the phone by the entrance ringing occasionally while I was confined to the storage room. But Tom and Sarah, too lazy to answer, ignored it. "Mom, I finally did it." "Really? Congratulations, Mary," I said, embracing my successful daughter. Mary had been working towards her dream for years. Working as an office worker at a small company while preparing for over 3 years, and she had finally achieved her long-held dream this year. As I was about to enter the storage room, "It's okay for today. You should spend time with your daughter," Sarah whispered. She didn't want Mary to know the truth about her mother-in-law being relegated to the storage room. I obediently headed to the living room where Mary was waiting. Sarah brought coffee with unfamiliar hands. As she placed the coffee on the table with trembling hands, "It's hot," she snapped. Mary looked on in surprise as Tom came down from the second floor, yawning nonchalantly. Mary, you're back. Tom, when did you get back? I hadn't heard anything. Mary glanced between Tom and Sarah and then said, But it's good, isn't it, Mom? Dad got transferred overseas, and it was lonely, but Tom came back. Yeah. Mary, sensing something was off with my weak smile, asked, What's wrong, Mom? You seem down. If there's anything bothering you, I'm here to listen. It's nothing. It's not something you need to worry about. I replied with the best forced smile I could manage. Mary decided to stay for a while. I'm looking forward to it, I said, and Mary blushed. If there's anything troubling you, I'll be here to help you, Mom, saying with enthusiasm. Is Mary becoming a school teacher? That's amazing. You must be so smart. Sarah exaggeratedly clapped her hands and praised Mary. That night, as I was about to close the door to the storage room. Why are you closing it? She asked, tilting her head in confusion. The door to the rarely used storage room is usually left open. There probably wasn't any reason to close it, even if there was a need to go in. I always sleep here. It doesn't have a window, but I need to close it to keep it from getting too cold, I said, showing the inside of the storage room to my daughter. In the middle of the empty space, without windows or a ventilation fan, there's a makeshift bed. Mom, have you lost weight recently? Are you okay? You seem a bit haggard. It's okay. It's just the usual. And please, keep this a secret from Jim. I don't want to unnecessarily worry him. It's late now, so you should use my room tonight. Mary seemed to sense something unsettling from my words and ran upstairs. Tom, I need to talk to you. Worried, I followed Mary. As soon as Tom opened his room door, Mary grabbed him by the collar. What's going on here? Why is Mom being pushed into the storage room? Tom looked annoyed. Let go! It's all Mom's fault, so it can't be helped. Then, shamelessly, Tom explained everything to his sister. So, you see? Mom is a terrible person. Mary sighed deeply. Are you kidding me? Tom, you actually believe that? It's not about believing. Sarah wouldn't lie to me. That means the liar is undoubtedly Mom. Call Sarah. I have something to say to her. Sarah, who had been eavesdropping from her room. What? Showed her face. What grudge do you have against Mom to make her suffer like this? Sarah, unapologetic. Because the real problem is Susan. It's also a way to make her reflect by having her sleep in the storage room. There shouldn't be any problem, right? Tom agreed with Sarah. Mary, with a firm stance. Then shall we settle this in court? Let's see which statement is acknowledged in a trial, Sarah's or Mom's. That's impossible, right? It's possible. Look at this. Do you understand what this is? Mary showed her law firm's website and profile. Sarah glanced away guiltily for a moment, but then, trying to be clever. Is it fake? You're mistaken if you think you can scare me with that. Sarah countered, still acting superior, which finally made my anger boil over. Mary is a real lawyer. Don't underestimate my daughter. She's not like you. Sarah then glared at me. That's a lie. You just said she was becoming a school teacher. Tom, who had been silent, chimed in. No, it's true that Mary was taking the bar exam. The school teacher thing was your misunderstanding. Chimed in. Seriously? Then we have no chance of winning. What do we do now? Sarah panicked. But that didn't mean Tom was on our side. That's cowardly. We're amateurs and you're a pro. It's childish to go to court over this. I think it's much more childish to force an unwanted parent into the storage room. Mary retorted strongly. Please, no court. Look, Mom can sleep in her own room from today. Please forgive us. I'm begging you. Please forgive me. I regret harassing Susan. After consulting with Mary, we made Tom and Sarah agree to leave the house immediately, never to return, and as an apology to me, they agreed to pay me $800 in cash. Sarah was reluctant to pay until the very end, but when I showed her a notebook I had secretly kept with detailed records of every harassment from Sarah, she turned pale. When did you? The notebook was a detailed record I kept to be ready for a lawsuit any time. Do you still want to go to court with this as evidence? Please forgive me. I'm sorry. Sarah ended up crying. After Tom and Sarah packed their belongings and left the family home, Mary whispered to me. I thought it was a bit lenient, but going through with a trial would have been too much trouble. I couldn't help but burst into laughter, too. But I'm grateful you were here for me. Thank you. Months later, as Mary took her first steps as a lawyer, Sarah unexpectedly showed up at her door. With bloodshot eyes, Sarah pleaded with Mary. Tom is divorcing me and demanding a huge settlement. Help me. Seeking aid from Tom's sister, of all people. The cause, it turned out, was Sarah's infidelity. The affair with another man started long before she married Tom and continued in secret even after their marriage. The reason for Sarah's late nights while living with Tom at the family home was because she was meeting her lover, leading to Tom's disenchantment once the affair was discovered. A divorce would have been manageable, but with her meager income from video streaming, Sarah's future looked bleak. Even though I was once your sister-in-law, could you please make the legal fees affordable? Sarah made an inexplicably unreasonable request to Mary, not understanding her own position. It's your own responsibility. I have no obligation to defend you, Mary said, before sending Sarah away with a laugh when telling me about it later. Ultimately unable to afford a lawyer, Sarah was forced to pay a substantial settlement. Tom, on the other hand, also fell on hard times after signing up for a marriage party found online, only to discover the organizing company was a scam group, losing all his savings to the fraudulent registration fee. Please, Mary! I'm in trouble. Help me out. But Mary firmly refused. I won't help you. It's your punishment for betraying Mom. It's your own responsibility. Cutting off her own brother. After work, Mary always hurried back home to eat the meals I prepared, making it her daily routine. Hasn't the house felt empty since they left? Mary jokingly said, to which I grimaced. Let's not talk about them anymore. Having you here is enough for me. Mary smiled sheepishly. So, you don't need Dad to come back either? Don't tease your mother. I'd be happier if Jim were here, too. We make a good pair, don't we? Mary said, somewhat exasperated. Seconds? Thank you. Your cooking is so good I never want to leave this house. You're always such a spoiled child. Mary and I continued to live happily together, waiting for Jim's return from overseas. I'm going to marry your sister. ATM is no longer needed. I could hear the mocking laughter over the phone. But I didn't let out a surprised sound. I thought if I played into their hands, it would weaken my position. And by now, I had not an iota of love left for my husband, Zach. Okay, brace yourself. I replied calmly, but inside, anger was boiling over. Zach, who dumped all the childcare, elder care, and housework on me, was enjoying an affair with my sister, Nicole. And Nicole too, after borrowing all that money from me, she slept with my husband and even called me an ATM at the end. It was unforgivable. "You're okay with us divorcing, right?" When Zach pressed me, I simply nodded yes. On the other end of the phone, the two of them cheered. Enjoy it while you can. There's no way they won't get their comeuppance for belittling me like this. I bit my lip hard. My name is Maggie. I'm 60 years old, living with my husband Zach, who's 5 years my senior. Our son, Alan, is 30 this year, already independent and out of the house. I was working part-time at a grocery store until recently, but due to the recent surge in prices, I was forced into early retirement for cost-cutting. The manager, who was very kind since I worked there for many years, even gave me a severance package despite being part-time. It's a bit sad to retire before reaching the age of retirement, but working at the grocery store definitely helped me grow. So I'm very grateful to the manager who continued to employ me. One might think I'm set for a slow life in retirement, but actually, I'm having some domestic issues. Well, more with Zach than with the household. With our loveless and distant marriage, I'm very anxious about living together for many more years. Why did it come to this? Let me start from the beginning. I met Zach over 40 years ago. Back then, I was a student job hunting, talking to various industry veterans. Most of them were seniors from the newspaper club I was part of. At a club drinking party, many alumni, including Zach, would show up. "Maggie, what kind of company do you want to work for?" Zach, rumored to be the handsome senior in the club, asked me with a comfortable distance. I honestly told him I wanted to work for a stable company. "How about the bank I work at?" "Banking's probably the most stable, right?" "Indeed, it seems like a solid job." While my response was cliché, I was happy Zach invited me to his bank. Encouraged by Zach, I applied to his bank and got the job. It wasn't too difficult as the bank hired many students from my university. Once I started working at the bank, I realized many women liked him. Zach, always invited out for meals after work, seemed out of reach for me. But Zach often asked me out, and despite feeling guilty towards his other admirers, I started going out with him more as I was interested. So, we started dating and got married 3 years later, after which I quit the bank. It's regretful to quit just after 4 years, but back then, most women quit upon marriage. Especially since Zach and I were in the same workplace, he seemed to prefer I work part-time elsewhere. I had no regrets about marrying Zach and quitting my job. For a while, we enjoyed our life together until I got pregnant and gave birth to our son, Alan, at 30. Zach, who used to treat me like a princess, suddenly became indifferent after the birth. "Zach, can you make a bottle for Alan?" "A bottle? That's a mom's job. Why do I have to do it?" His sudden change in attitude left me more in shock rather than in sadness or anger. I had heard that men sometimes lose interest when their wives give birth. But I thought that was a story for only a small fraction of couples. I never imagined that Zach, who loved me so much, would suddenly cast me aside like throwing something into the open sea after I had our child. From then on, every day was a whirlwind. Zach continued to refuse to help with the baby. "Taking care of the baby is a mom's job. Plus, you're a housewife, so it's natural for you to take care of it. I'm busy with work." Zach had his plausible reasons, but they didn't satisfy me. "But it's my first time too, and raising the baby alone is hard work." As I countered while watching Zach's reaction, he glared at me. "If it's that hard, why don't you go to my dad's? Dad's free and can help you out." "To your father?" "Yeah, that's right." I was utterly shocked by Zach's suggestion. Zach's mom had passed away early, and only his dad, Bob, was left, who recently had trouble with his legs and might need to go to a care facility. How could he think of leaving our child with Bob? Moreover, Zach completely refused to be involved with the baby, essentially just dumping it on his parents. Zach's outlandish idea left me troubled. Since then, I received little help from Zach in raising Alan, and I had to do it alone, repeatedly reading childcare books. Fortunately, Alan was a well-behaved and obedient child who listened to me and grew up healthy. When Alan turned 5, after sending him off to kindergarten, I noticed a call on my mobile phone. "Maggie, it looks like Dad collapsed. I'm thinking of putting him in a facility. Can you handle the paperwork?" "What? Collapsed? Is he okay? And about the facility?" I was very surprised by Zach's call. The news of Bob's collapse was alarming. I hoped he had been taken to the hospital in time. Given Bob's leg condition, it must have been quite a struggle. Bob had always been fond of me, treating me like his own daughter, and I regularly took Alan to visit him, even without Zach asking. The in-laws' house was about a 40-minute drive from our home. Every time we visited, "Thank you for coming all this way," Bob would say with a kind smile. Alan and I both loved Bob and, despite the distance, always wanted to visit him again and again. Hearing that Bob had collapsed, I was filled with anxiety, but Zach only mentioned putting him in a facility in a matter-of-fact tone, which irritated me. "Just handle it, I'm busy with work, okay?" "Wait a minute." Zach cut the call quickly after saying his piece. The idea of putting Bob in a facility was unthinkable to me. Unless it was Bob's own wish, it seemed like Zach was just deciding to put him in a facility on his own. After much thought, I decided to take care of Bob myself as soon as he recovered. When I arrived at the hospital where Bob had been sent, he was in the hospital room and had already regained his consciousness. Bob was over 70 but had struggled to continue the family's farming business despite his leg issues. Both Zach and I had asked Bob to rest, but he insisted on going to the field that day. "Maggie, sorry for troubling you." "No, please, just don't strain yourself anymore." "All right." It seemed Bob had learned his lesson this time and stopped going to the field after being discharged. Bob's field was no longer used for crops, leaving only an empty land. Though it could be revived with care, the land would probably be passed on to Zach, his only son, who I doubted would take up farming. I felt sorry for the neglected field but thought it was for the best if it meant Bob wouldn't strain himself further. After that, I started caring for Bob, visiting the in-laws' house about 3 times a week. I also began working part-time at the grocery store around that time, juggling work, childcare, caregiving, and household chores. For childcare, I switched Alan from kindergarten to daycare with extended hours, managing to make time. I worked 4 mornings a week till after lunch and then went to the in-laws' house. After caring for Bob, I would pick up Alan from daycare, go home, and make dinner. It was very challenging initially due to inexperience. Though it became slightly easier as I got used to it, I didn't realize how tired I was becoming. I had no time to talk to Zach and was overwhelmed just dealing with the tasks at hand. 10 years passed in this manner, and I turned 45, Zach 50. By then, Alan had become a teenager and often rebelled against me. But I saw this as a sign of his growing independence and, while feeling a bit lonely, I was happy about his growth. However, Alan never showed any defiance towards Zach. In fact, he hardly ever spoke to him. Zach had abandoned any childcare responsibilities from Alan's birth, leaving everything to me, so it seemed Alan didn't really think of Zach as his dad. It was around this time that our loveless and distant family relationship reached a critical point. The catalyst was a call from my sister, Nicole. "Hi, Maggie. I just got back from a trip to Hawaii with friends and I've got some souvenirs for you. Can I drop by your place?" Nicole, my elder sister by 3 years, has always been reckless with money and had a fiery temperament, making us quite incompatible. She always wore flashy makeup and was more beautiful than me. I was suspicious of her intention to give me souvenirs but couldn't refuse her kind gesture and agreed. When Nicole came over the weekend, she handed me the souvenirs, which I realized were not from Hawaii and were clearly common sweets available locally. I chose to stay silent, thinking that pointing this out would only upset her. "Hey, Maggie. I'm short on cash this month. Can you lend me some money? Suddenly visiting with a fake souvenir and now this, I wondered what she was up to. Lend you money. Why? I suspected it was just Nicole's usual spending habits leaving her broke. Well, I've been feeling unwell lately. The doctor said I might need to be hospitalized. But I don't have insurance and can't afford the hospital and treatment costs. Nicole, sounding feeble, left me speechless. What kind of illness required hospitalization? I silently stared at Nicole, who looked at me pleadingly. Okay. Just pay me back after your treatment. Thanks. Sisters are the best. Nicole's face lit up as she shook my hand. Despite our differences, she was my sister and I wanted her to get well soon if she was ill. By the way, when is Zach getting back? Once Nicole knew I'd lend her the money, she casually asked this. Zach just went to the grocery store. Oh, I see. I'll just say hi then and leave. Right then, the front door opened and Zach returned. Hey, Zach. Oh, Nicole. You're here. Yes, just had something to discuss with Maggie. But I'm done now and will be leaving. As Nicole stood up and passed by Zach, she seemed to whisper something in his ear. After Nicole left. What did Nicole say to you earlier? I asked, but nothing important. Zach evaded the question. I remained curious but soon forgot about it. The discovery of Zach and Nicole's affair happened a month later. I planned to visit Bob that day, but work got extended, so I postponed my visit to the in-laws' house to the next day and went home as usual. Alan was at the library, so only Zach should have been home. Why are there women's shoes here? As I took off my shoes at the entrance, I noticed a familiar pair of heels. They were the high heels Nicole wore over the weekend. Entering the house, the living room was empty, which relieved me momentarily. But then, from the bedroom, I heard faint, indiscreet voices of Zach and Nicole. What are they doing? I considered confronting them right then but hesitated at the last moment. What if Zach demands a divorce after being exposed? Alan wouldn't want to live with Zach. But I wasn't confident I could afford Alan's education fees alone. If we were to divorce, I wanted to wait until Alan had graduated from college. Frustrated, I decided to leave the house, pretending I saw nothing. Instead, I gathered evidence of the affair, taking photos of their traces and secretly saving the exchanges between Zach and Nicole from his mobile phone. It appeared they had been having an affair for about 6 months. Despite the anger boiling inside me, I reminded myself it was for Alan and endured, not exposing the affair. Another 15 years have passed since then, and Alan is now part of the working world. After graduating from college and leaving his first job early, Alan set up his own business and is now working hard as its president. And as the story goes, I had retired from the grocery store, but I was working a little at Alan's company. I had been giving Nicole money for her treatment bit by bit, but when her requests became too persistent, I grew reluctant to lend more and started ignoring her calls. In fact, the signs of Nicole and Zach's affair had disappeared about a year after it came to light. Zach probably got bored of Nicole. He changed his mind and chose to stay married to me. Knowing this, I couldn't bring myself to pursue the matter of the affair anymore and decided to pretend it never happened. But I realized my naivety when I heard about Bob's death. I got the news about Bob from Zach during the day. Bob had lived a long life until 95, but I was deeply shocked by the loss of Bob, who I had cared for so long. Bob, unlike Zach, was kind and considerate, so his passing felt like losing my own parent. Yet even then, Zach said, "Dad seems to have accumulated a lot of wealth, so that's exciting." Laughing. I was so angry that I thought of giving Zach a piece of my mind, but then I heard a woman's laughter from nearby. Oops, did she realize we're together? I was chilled to the bone at the sound of Nicole's voice. Had Nicole and Zach's relationship not ended after all? For 15 years, they had continued their affair without my knowledge. Realizing this, they seemed like an incomprehensible entity to me. I'm going to marry your sister. ATM is no longer needed. I could hear the mocking laughter over the phone. But I didn't let out a sound of surprise. I thought if I played into their hands, it would weaken my position, and by now, I had not an iota of love left for Zach. Okay, brace yourself. I replied calmly, but inside, anger was boiling over. Zach, who dumped all the childcare, elder care, and housework on me, was enjoying an affair with Nicole. And Nicole too, after borrowing all that money from me, she slept with my husband and even called me an ATM at the end. It was unforgivable. You're okay with us divorcing, right? When Zach pressed me, I simply nodded yes. On the other end of the phone, the two of them cheered. Enjoy it while you can. There's no way they won't get their comeuppance for belittling me like this. I bit my lip hard. After Bob's funeral, I filed for divorce as promised. When I informed Zach, he seemed so delighted that it felt like he was doing it on purpose. Now that we're divorced, you should leave this house as soon as possible. Me leave? I asked, surprised, and Zach nodded as if it were obvious. I'm going to live with Nicole, and you'll be living alone. This house is too big for one person. Anger turned to disbelief, and I said, okay. Too weary to argue, and agreed to Zach's demands. Though upset, I had already considered my living situation before the divorce. Leaving our home, I headed to Alan's, who was living independently. I had contacted Alan beforehand, and he welcomed his mom, who had just left Zach, with open arms. He's truly a kind son. I resolved to work even harder at Alan's company. A few days later, a man claiming to be a lawyer contacted me. When I went to the specified location, Zach, Nicole, and the lawyer were seated. I am in possession of a will left by Zach's dad, the lawyer said, and took out the will signed by Bob from his bag. I was surprised as I didn't know Bob had left a will. As Zach's only child, he was the legal heir to Bob's assets. Being no longer Zach's wife, I had no claim to any inheritance. Why was I called then? As I wondered, the lawyer read the will. Its contents were astounding. Bob had left half of his assets to me. That meant the field Bob owned was now part of my estate. While Zach would inherit the other half due to his legal share, he had surely not expected me to inherit anything. Why does Maggie get half of the inheritance? I'm his only son, I should receive it all. Dad was very grateful to Maggie for her selfless care, even though they were not related by blood. He meant it as a thank you. Bob. I was deeply moved by Bob's thoughtfulness. What the heck is this? I thought we could finally relax with the inheritance. Nicole twisted her face in frustration. The lawyer then mentioned that Bob's will had also left all of his debts to Zach, but it seemed Zach and Nicole were too upset to hear that part. I was overwhelmed with gratitude towards Bob, and before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. Thank you, Bob. Seeing me in tears, the two of them seemed to grow even angrier, but the lawyer concluded. That is the content of the will. With that, Zach and Nicole seemed to snap back to reality. I'm not happy about losing half, but hey, we still have half of the inheritance left. Gotta thank the law for that. Zach said as he patted Nicole's shoulder, who nodded in agreement, right. Well, we'll be leaving now. We won't have anything to do with you anymore, so take care. They laughed loudly as they left. I returned to Alan's house, savoring Bob's last act of kindness. After receiving the inheritance from Bob, I continued working at Alan's place without incident, and before I knew it, 2 months had passed. That's when Zach called me, on a Sunday. Alan and I were both off work, relaxing at home, but my mobile phone started ringing insistently. Zach! The air froze between me and Alan as we realized it was Zach calling. Why is Dad calling? He abandoned you, and now what does he want? You don't have to answer. Alan said so, but the phone kept ringing persistently. Irritated, I decided to answer to silence Zach. What is it, calling me repeatedly? You said we wouldn't have anything to do with each other ever again. I answered with a tone of annoyance, But Zach seemed not to hear me and started talking frantically. Hey, what's going on? Why are you working at Alan's company? And why is Alan's company being featured on TV? And what's with showing your fancy house? Zach's near hysterical voice echoed through the phone, causing Alan to frown. You saw the TV. I realized why Zach was calling all of a sudden. Recently, a TV station had interviewed Zach's gym, and it was broadcast yesterday. Alan's gym, which combines a gym and cafe, had caught the TV station's interest due to its novelty. Since opening, the gym had rapidly increased its membership, and Alan appeared on TV as a successful young entrepreneur, even showcasing our home as Zach mentioned. The house we live in now, Alan's home, is quite luxurious, far surpassing the neighboring houses in size. So Zach saw Alan's house and was shocked enough to call. What do you mean you guys are living in such a big house? Over here, Nicole used up all of Dad's inheritance, and I even got left with his debts. Damn it, I didn't hear about that from the lawyer back then. Zach yelled angrily over the phone. But back then, the lawyer did mention that Bob had left all his debts to Zach. It wasn't my fault that Zach had not listened, and it was none of my business. It's none of my business, Zach. The lawyer clearly mentioned it, and it's your responsibility for not paying attention. Besides, you knew about Nicole's spending habits even before marrying her, right? I gave her money for treatment and haven't been repaid yet. This just proves to me that you and Nicole are the worst kind of people, quick to betray someone you should trust. In response to my correct argument, Zach remained silent, unable to say anything. Besides, isn't it all your fault for cheating on me in the first place? I just don't understand why I have to be blamed. I let out my pent-up frustrations, feeling somewhat relieved. Realizing he couldn't blame me, Zach suddenly changed his tone to a pleading one. Please, Maggie. I'm begging you, lend me some money. I was supposed to get a retirement fund this year, but I got fired, and all I'm left with are Dad's debts. Nicole left after we argued about money. How am I supposed to live now? You're my only hope. I admit I was wrong about everything. I apologize. Just give me a little bit of Dad's inheritance. You're living a good life with Alan, right? Think of it as helping someone out, okay? His nerve to beg his ex-wife for money after cheating and leaving her was beyond comprehension. Alan, who had been listening to the conversation, looked at me, seemingly wanting to say something. I handed my mobile phone to Alan. Alan turned on the speaker and firmly said to Zach, Dad, you betrayed Mom and married Nicole, right? And I heard you never took care of me since I was born. I don't have any memories of playing with you after I became aware. It was always just Mom and me. On Parents' Day and Sports Day, it was always just Mom who came. That's why I'm helping Mom with my company and living with her. Why should I, who you never did anything for, lend you money? My only parent is Mom. I won't give you a single dollar. Alan's strong, businesslike tone choked me up. I could sense Zach gasping on the other end of the phone. Alan, how could you say that to your dad? Fine, I won't rely on you guys ever again. Don't insult me. With that, Zach hung up. We looked at the silent mobile phone and then burst out laughing together. Zach begged us for money, and now he says he won't have anything to do with us. What an idiot. Yeah. Dad has always been like that, getting angry without thinking ahead. As we discussed Zach's foolishness, the phone rang again. It was Zach. He probably wanted to ask for money, despite saying he wouldn't contact us again. Fed up, I blocked Zach's contact. That's it. Now that fool can't bother us anymore. Yeah. Thanks, Mom. His gratitude for being raised seemed implicit. I should be the one thanking you. You've given me such a great life. No matter how old you get, you're still my precious son. We reaffirmed our bond as mother and son, grateful for each other's presence in our spacious home. A few days later, my sister Nicole called me. Her request was almost identical to what Zach had said. I couldn't fathom lending more money to Nicole, who hadn't even repaid what she owed me. In fact, I hadn't yet demanded compensation for her affair with Zach, so I successfully sued both of them for damages through a lawyer. They ended up getting divorced after being married. Their marriage only lasted for 2 months. Zach was even worse off than Nicole. The negative inheritance he received from Dad was too substantial. Bob had borrowed a lot of money for farming, managing it all by himself. I hadn't known about it. While caring for Bob, he often complained about Zach. Bob was able to forgive Zach for not taking over the farming business, but the fact that he didn't take care of Alan and not visit his own father was unforgivable. He was also furious with the way Zach treated me, and I always tried to soothe him, saying it was okay. If kind Bob was that angry, Zach must have been quite a negligent son. All of Zach's expected retirement funds were gone due to his dismissal for misconduct. Rumor has it he even tried to embezzle money from his bank to pay off his debts. Had he just worked quietly until the end, he would have received his retirement money. His greed was his downfall. Now, while receiving a pension, he seems to be working 3 part-time jobs to pay off his debts. Starting a new job at 65 and being taught by younger people as a newcomer must be shattering his pride. Although he has worked as a bank employee for many years, his part-time job as a new employee involves a lot of odd jobs. A hard adjustment for someone who never did housework, childcare, or elder care. He'll likely give up soon enough. For Zach, who neglected his son and cheated with Nicole for years, it's a fitting punishment. I hope he manages until the end. As for me, I'm still working energetically at Alan's workplace. The staff, who are around my child's age, treat me very kindly. Our workplace is always full of smiles, attracting many customers. Alan recently got engaged to a girl a year younger than him and introduced her to me. She's a wonderful, sensible young lady. Well respected at work. I was planning to move out when they married, but she insisted we live together. I'm grateful for her kindness and looking forward to our future together.
My name is Phyllis, and I'm 24 years old. I've been married for a year to Ronald, who is 12 years older than me, and we're currently living with my in-laws. The person who brought Ronald and me together is Judy, Ronald's sister and my best friend from high school. Judy moved to my hometown for high school from the city. Since there were no dorms, she lived with relatives while attending school. She got along well with those relatives, but they had kids close in age, so there was some tension. After becoming friends with me, Judy started visiting my house often because it was close to school. My family is a typical secondary income farming household. My dad works in the state capitol, and my mom and grandparents run the farm. I have 2 older brothers and 1 younger brother, so we're a big family. Our home isn't fancy, but Judy always said, "Your house is so cozy. It feels warm every time I visit." She even helped with the harvest on weekends. My grandparents, parents, and brothers all welcomed her. My cheeky younger brother would say, "Judy is so kind and beautiful, unlike you, Phyllis. I wish she were my real sister," just to annoy me. Even during long vacations like summer and winter breaks, Judy wouldn't go back to her parents' home. She'd make excuses like attending tutorial classes or having a part-time job. I'd say, "Don't you think your mom and dad want to see you? Why not go home during the break?" But she seemed hesitant. My parents and older brothers told me not to pry, saying Judy must have her reasons. Sometimes Ronald, Judy's brother, would visit her and even come to our house. "Thank you for always taking care of Judy," he'd say, handing over some sweets as a gift. Later, I went to the same junior college as Judy. Although we were on the same campus when she was a senior, we couldn't spend as much time together as we did in high school. During that time, I ran into Ronald at the coffee shop where I worked part-time. Feeling lonely, living away from my big family, I found comfort in Ronald's kindness. When he asked me out, it felt like a dream. I immediately told Judy, who was shocked. "Wait, you and Ronald?" "Yeah, I'm sorry for keeping it a secret. Ronald said he'd be embarrassed if you found out." Although I expected Judy to be surprised, I thought she'd be happier for me. Instead, she remained expressionless. When I told Ronald about her reaction, he said,
"She's probably just shocked. She always looked up to me as her brother."
I didn't think much of it after that. After graduating from junior college and getting a job, Ronald and I continued dating. He proposed to me in the spring of my 3rd year of employment. Some people thought we were rushing, but we'd been dating for 4 years. Ronald said,
"I want to build a happy family with you."
And I was swept away by emotion. But the happiness lasted only until our return trip from our honeymoon. As we rode in a taxi from the airport, I felt something was off. When I asked Ronald where we were stopping, he said,
"Stopping? We're going home, of course,"
and took my hand. Home? But the taxi was heading to... Before I could finish the thought, the taxi stopped in front of a familiar house. "This is your parents' house, Ronald. What's going on?" Before Ronald could answer, the front door opened and his parents, Justina and Neville, greeted us with big smiles. "Welcome back. You must be tired."
"We've prepared a feast, thinking you'd miss home-cooked meals."
They ushered us inside, telling us to put down our luggage and change clothes. In the room they pointed to, I saw some of the furniture my parents had given us as a wedding gift. What's going on? I thought we agreed on that condo near the station. Confused, I confronted Ronald, who nonchalantly said,
"Ah, the condo. We did consider it. But when I went to get the guarantor seal from my parents, they suggested we live with them. We were planning to move in eventually, so I thought, why not start now?"
He showed no signs of guilt. Ignoring my stunned expression, he said,
"I'm hungry. Let's go downstairs."
Still confused, I followed him to the living room, where a feast including steak was laid out. Ronald looked delighted. As I sat down, Justina handed me a glass and said, "Let's start with a toast. We're family now, even if it's by marriage," and poured me a beer. After pouring drinks for Neville, Ronald, and herself, Justina said, "Starting tomorrow, you're the wife of this family's son. You'll be serving not just Ronald, but us parents as well. Keep that in mind." She grinned as she said it. And so my life of living with my in-laws began, just like a sneak attack. It was exactly as Justina had declared. A life of servitude to my in-laws and Ronald. First thing in the morning, I had to prepare breakfast by 6 a.m. for Neville, who had taken early retirement and enjoyed morning walks. The menu was extensive: croissants and coffee for Neville, oatmeal and smoothies for Justina, and toast and tea for Ronald. In between, I had to do laundry, clean, and prepare lunch for Neville. I had to wake up at 5 a.m. and didn't have a moment to sit down until I left for work. If I worked overtime, I'd get scolded. I'd skip lunch, sipping nutritional drinks at my desk, and rush home to clean the bathroom. Then, without a break, I'd clean up the dishes and glasses my in-laws had used and prepare dinner. However, I wasn't allowed to sit at the table until Ronald came home. "It's unthinkable for a wife to eat alone. You should wait for Ronald. We won't allow you to let him eat alone." That was the strict rule. Even if Ronald went to a bar with colleagues after work, I had to wait for him. Whether it was 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., without eating or showering. After 6 months of this life, I lost weight and was flagged for further tests during a health check. When I told Ronald, he said,
"You were a bit chubby to begin with. It's good you lost weight,"
showing no concern. The only person I could think to talk to was Judy, but she never came near this house, which should have been her home. Her room had even been turned into a storage space. I thought about messaging her on WhatsApp, but she probably wouldn't want to hear bad things about her parents or brother. Besides, she had seemed somewhat cold during our wedding and reception, perhaps still resenting that I took her brother. Unable to send the half-written message, I just deleted it. A year after getting married, I realized I was pregnant. By this point, I was physically and emotionally drained. Rather than feeling joy, I was overwhelmed with worry. Certainly, morning sickness changes the game. It might sound strange, but the worse the morning sickness got, the more I felt like it was an SOS from the baby inside me, like it was saying, "Come on, Mom, get it together." And with that thought, my resolve to protect this child at all costs grew stronger. Despite ongoing struggles with morning sickness and poor health, I decided to take an early leave from work, thanks to the advice from colleagues and my boss. No more dealing with rush hour, but Justina warned me.
Seriously, don't think you can slack off on housework just because you're pregnant.
What made it even harder was meal prep. The smell of cooking meat wasn't the only thing triggering my morning sickness. It was also the smell of the pickled cabbage that Neville insisted we always have in stock. I tried wearing a mask and other measures, but nothing helped. When I asked Ronald for support, he said,
"Why are you telling me? Don't gag in front of the family. It's making me lose my appetite."
But it's not like I could control the gagging. In the end, taking time off work didn't help. My morning sickness got worse, and I couldn't even eat properly due to poor health and fatigue. Still, I had to get nutrition for the baby's sake. I managed by making easily digestible foods like yogurt and soup. But even that seemed to annoy Justina.
"What's with the attitude? Trying to show off how weak you are?"
she said, pushing leftover fried foods and spicy meat dishes on me. I tried to eat them, but I couldn't hold back the nausea and ended up vomiting. This only fueling Justina's anger, making everything worse. As the days went by, the stress seemed to accumulate, and my appearance changed drastically. My hair lost its shine and became tangled. Dark circles formed under my eyes, and my complexion worsened. To make matters worse, to prevent ticks and mold as Neville insisted, I had to carry the bed mattress from my in-laws' bedroom to the wooden deck almost every day when the weather was good. This strained my back and knees. Seeing me crawl around because of the pain, Ronald and Justina mocked me together.
"What are you doing?" "Acting like an old person." "Seriously, you look like you've aged 20 years.
They laughed, showing no concern at all. Around this time, Ronald got busy with a big project and started spending more time away from home. He was the only one in my in-laws' house who would take my side. With Ronald gone more often, I had no one to turn to when I felt abdominal pain in the middle of the night. I had to endure it until morning, when I could finally make an appointment at my maternity clinic. But even that was stopped by Justina. Apparently, she'd been criticized for not taking good care of me, saying I looked skeletal from going to the hospital so much.
"Because of my incompetent daughter-in-law, people are gossiping that I'm mistreating you. I'm too embarrassed to even go out,"
she exclaimed. From then on, she forbade me from going to the clinic unless she accompanied me. Even for prenatal checkups, I had to beg her to let me go. If I felt suddenly ill, she'd say,
"You'll get better if you just endure it a little."
And I had no choice but to wait for natural recovery. Around the same time, my dad, who was coming nearby for work, called to say he'd like to visit me at my in-laws' house. Justina sharply responded,
"Once she's married, she's not your daughter anymore. Don't interfere."
She then took my phone, deleted WhatsApp, and blocked almost all my contacts.
"Who knows what you might say about us if you keep those unnecessary connections,"
she warned.
"If you unblock them, you'll regret it."
she added, tossing my phone back at me. I sat there drained, feeling like I was trapped in an invisible cage. That thought just kept running through my head. From then on, I became a robot, doing whatever my in-laws and Ronald told me to do. I neither cried nor laughed, just mechanically did the housework. But one day, during a prenatal checkup that Justina reluctantly accompanied me to, my weight and blood pressure readings were so bad that the doctor strongly advised overnight hospitalization. Justina protested vehemently, but the doctor insisted. If you neglect the mother's health, a safe delivery is out of the question. Either she stays overnight for thorough testing, or we can't assist with the delivery. Thanks to the doctor's firm stance, I was able to spend a peaceful night in the hospital bed. Having meals made for me, lying in a bed without snide comments, every moment of it was a blessing. But that dreamlike time was short-lived. The next morning, my in-laws came to the hospital as soon as they heard the test results were out. Ignoring the doctor and midwife's advice about improving my nutrition and accumulated fatigue, they took me back home. What a quack doctor! Pregnancy isn't a disease. There's no need for all this fuss.
Exactly. We don't need a doctor like that.
Then they ordered me to catch up on all the housework. Once that was done, they told me to call the hospital and say, I won't be coming in anymore because I'm going back to my parents' house to give birth. When I heard that, I couldn't help but feel joy and asked, Really? I can go back to my parents' house? But when I saw them smirking and saying, Of course not. We can call an ambulance if needed, I felt like the floor tilted beneath me. However, considering the baby, I couldn't agree to stop the prenatal checkups. I waited for Ronald to come home and begged him to talk to his parents. But when he came home drunk, he said,
What's the point of prenatal checkups? If my experienced mom says you're just being needy, she must be right.
He then fell into bed and started snoring. Seeing this, I felt even more trapped in despair. The next morning, I woke up from a short sleep and noticed something was terribly wrong. What's happening? It shouldn't be this dim in the early morning. But even the light through the curtains was blinding. I couldn't keep my eyes open. Even when I got used to the brightness, my eyelids twitched and my vision was foggy. I groped my way downstairs to find the first aid kit and hurriedly applied eye drops. But nothing changed. When I cautiously checked each eye, I realized I couldn't see anything with my right eye, as if I had gone blind. Ah! The moment I screamed in terror, my hand hit a vase, knocking it over and shattering it with a loud crash. Hearing the crash, my in-laws and Ronald woke up in a bad mood. When I told them I couldn't see out of one eye, they scoffed. Who's going to believe such a lie? You're not getting any sympathy here.
What on earth are you thinking, making noise this early? This vase was expensive. What have you done, you failure?
They just berated and mocked me, then saying things like, We were supposed to have a leisurely morning before leaving, and
Don't want to miss our flight.
They each returned to their rooms. Leaving? Don't tell me they're all going somewhere. About an hour must have passed. My body started shaking, perhaps because I got wet when the vase broke. That's when the three of them came into the living room, chatting happily.
Mom and the others want to go golfing, so we're taking a 4-day trip. You can stay home and do housework.
Yes, clean up the broken vase and keep the house tidy, they said, and left through the front door with a cheerful Neville. I heard a car right away. They must have called a taxi. They really don't care about me or the baby in my belly. As soon as I thought that, tears started flowing uncontrollably. I don't know how long I sat there crying. The shaking stopped, perhaps because I had gotten cold, but now I was losing sensation from the tips of my hands and feet. I can't just sit here crying. I need to change clothes. But with my blurred vision, I couldn't judge distances well, and was afraid to step on the shards of the broken vase. Just then, the doorbell rang repeatedly, followed by the sound of someone turning the doorknob. Who? As I wondered, I heard the door open and multiple footsteps approaching. 5 days had passed since Ronald and the others left for golfing and their trip. Just when I thought they should be coming back soon, my phone started vibrating nonstop with incoming calls. I ignored it for a while, but it got annoying, so I finally answered. Yes, what is it?
What do you mean, what is it? Where are you? You've left the laundry and haven't prepared any meals.
Why should I have to prepare meals? When I shot back, Ronald went silent for a moment, surprised. Then he snapped.
Just get back here now. We're tired from our trip.
Why should I have to take care of you just because you're tired from your trip? When I retorted again, this time my in-laws, who seemed to have snatched the phone from Ronald, took turns yelling.
What a cheeky woman! Stop talking back and get back here now.
Just then, someone who had been listening to Ronald and his parents' tirades through the speakerphone on my end spoke up. Could you all calm down? If you have something to say it calmly. Hearing that voice, Ronald and his parents went silent again. Then, sounding half skeptical, Ronald asked,
Is that you, Judy?
To which Judy, still with her arms crossed, casually replied, Yes, it is. Seems like you at least remember your sister's voice. The day Ronald and the others left, the person who had come to visit was Judy. She had entered the living room, leading a group that included a doctor from the maternity clinic and several police officers. Pull yourself together, Phyllis. We're taking you to the hospital right now. The moment I heard Judy's voice and felt her warm hand on my back, my consciousness faded. When I woke up, I was in an ER room, with Judy sitting in a chair next to me, looking concerned. Judy? Was that not a dream? Then with a face that looked like she was both crying and laughing, Judy said, You don't have to worry anymore, and squeezed my hand tightly. Seeing how happy you looked at your wedding, I thought maybe they had changed, but trash will always be trash. If they're rotten to the core, there's no fixing them. Hearing Judy mock them like that, Ronald and his parents raised their voices, as if their blood was boiling.
How dare you? You never even visited us, and now you're sticking your nose in our business? That's right, you ungrateful woman. Just bring her here now. We need to straighten her out.
But Judy was unfazed. Phyllis is in the hospital on bed rest, so she can't go anywhere. And from now on, she won't be visiting your home either, she calmly stated. She also added that while they were away, she had removed all the furniture and personal items my parents had sent me. At that, we heard running sounds from the other end of the phone.
Hey, the stuff is really gone. What's the meaning of this?
This time it was Neville yelling, but Judy remained calm. What's the meaning? Well, it's obviously leading to a divorce. She then went on to explain that when they rescued me, they had to break the front door lock and had called the police to witness it. After I was rushed to the hospital, the maternity clinic doctor who had accompanied Judy testified to the police about the dangerous conditions I was living under. I've already convinced Phyllis to file a complaint. Maybe instead of worrying about your runaway wife, you should worry about your own future. She chuckled. After waking up in the hospital, Judy told me everything. Turns out she wasn't the child of Justina, but was born from an affair Neville had. She was taken in by Neville when she was young. He only took me in because he wanted to look good, saying, "How noble, taking in a child from an affair." But I was treated horribly at home. That's why I went to a high school far away. But what about Ronald visiting you so often? He's like my mother, good at keeping up appearances. He wanted to sell the image of a caring brother to relatives while venting his stress by constantly making snide remarks to me. She had been shocked when Ronald and I started dating and got married, but thought maybe he had changed and wanted to support us from a distance. But visiting would mean facing her parents, and she couldn't bring herself to do it. By the time she realized, she couldn't even send me a WhatsApp message, and thought I had blocked her. She never suspected it was the work of my in-laws. I never thought they could be that trashy. I guess I was naive too, she said. But then, on the night before the day I was abandoned, she received unexpected contact from someone. The doctor at that maternity clinic is actually an old friend of mine. We've known each other since preschool all the way through junior high. Out of the blue, she sent me a WhatsApp message saying, "Your sister-in-law is in serious trouble if things keep going like this." I had never mentioned anything about this, but it seems that doctor had always been suspicious about how my in-laws were treating me. Her suspicions were confirmed during that forced discharge incident. She reached out to Judy, another childhood friend, to warn her about my situation and to keep me safe. It was unexpected, but it made sense. I had lost all contact, and I started to think that maybe my in-laws and Ronald could actually do something terrible. So the next morning, she decided to visit my in-laws for the first time in years. Coincidentally, the doctor was off that day and agreed to go with her, but no matter how many times they rang the doorbell, there was no answer. Finally, they looked through the window and saw me collapsed on the floor. They immediately called the police and also called a 24-hour locksmith. After being rushed to the hospital, I started treatment and, on Judy's advice, contacted my parents and brothers. My family, who had been worried about my sudden lack of communication, were outraged. They said, "We knew something was off, but we had no idea it was this bad." After discussing it with Judy, they helped me move all my belongings out of my in-laws' house. "We'll hire a lawyer, so don't worry about the money," they assured me. When Ronald and my in-laws found out they were being investigated for neglect of a dependent and domestic violence, their arrogant attitudes vanished. "We didn't mean for this to happen."
"We'll change. Just forgive us this one mistake. We'll pay you. Just let us go quietly,"
they pleaded. But now, with the support of Judy and my family, Ronald and his parents are no longer a threat to me. If they're harmful to my unborn baby, then they need to be removed from our lives. All I want is a divorce, compensation, child support for the baby that's coming, and a lump sum payment for my medical bills. If any of these things are missing, I'll take further action. With that, I turned off my phone and exchanged smiles with Judy. After that, I received proper medical treatment and quickly regained my health. At the same time, the stress-related eye issues I had been experiencing began to improve. 4 months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Thanks to Judy and a lawyer my family hired, the divorce proceedings with Ronald went smoothly. I received a lump sum payment for all the financial compensation, and I cut ties with my in-laws. Judy also decided to sever her relationship with them. She made an agreement with my former in-laws to forego any inheritance in exchange for not having to take care of them in their old age. According to Judy, Ronald had to use most of his retirement fund to make the lump sum payment to me. On top of that, rumors about the whole ordeal spread to his workplace, making him uncomfortable enough to resign. Unable to find another job, Ronald and his parents are now scraping by on their pensions. Judy said, "In the end, they're only leaving behind a legacy of negativity." To make matters worse, during my rescue, neighbors had gathered as if watching a spectacle. Now they're saying things like, "That family made their daughter-in-law half sick," and "How scary." They've become almost reclusive due to the constant gossip. On the other hand, I've returned to my hometown with my newborn child. With the help of my parents and siblings, I'm fully committed to raising my child every day. I hope my child grows up to be genuinely strong, never forgetting to be grateful and compassionate to those around him.
Welcome back, both of you! You must be hungry, right? Today I've cooked up some pasta with all my skills. Megan, my daughter-in-law, who had never cooked before, said as soon as she returned home. This is clearly a sign of something. Oh wow, it looks delicious. Mom would think so too. My son Johnny commented. Indeed, the pasta on the table looked appetizing. But there was an indescribable eeriness about it. Too suspicious. As Megan urged us to sit down, Johnny said we should eat. Can we really eat this without any worry? Johnny and his wife are staring at us as if urging us to quickly eat the pasta in front of us. What should I do? Then, at that moment, hello! That voice saved me from my predicament. My name is Lenora. I returned to my parents' house 30 years ago following a divorce. Both my parents have passed away since, and now it's just me. Living alone at 73 might seem tough and lonely to others, but it's not like that for me. Compared to where I lived before, the cost of living is lower, and the neighbors are all nice people. My hobby, coffee, helps me forget about unnecessary worries, and, in its own way, lets me enjoy life. In such a leisurely life, a little disturbance can become a stress. For instance, the presence of the people who are about to come here. Welcome. It's just the two of you today? I took time out of my busy schedule to come here, and you're not satisfied with just us? That's why Megan dislikes you. Hey, don't say that! There's no way I dislike Lenora. She's so kind. Right, Lenora? Johnny, my eldest son, said this with a hint of sarcasm. Megan, my daughter-in-law, was stringing together words that were obviously lies. They met as colleagues at the same company 20 years ago and started dating a month later. Half a year after that, they got married. The rapid progress of their relationship surprised everyone at the time. There was no time to think about anything during the rush of meeting the families and the wedding. People would make sarcastic comments about their marriage. There's no way it'll work out with such a short courtship. They'll definitely divorce soon. As their mother, those comments always left a bitter taste in my mouth. But it turns out, they've been married for 20 years now, had children, and contrary to everyone's expectations, they're living a happy life. As their parent, I'm impressed with how well they've done. Hey, Mom! Mom! Are you listening? Sorry, I wasn't concentrating. Lenora, please! You're only 73. It's too early for dementia, right? If you're like this, we'll have to put you in a home. Megan is kind, but sometimes she says things that belittle people. But Megan does have a point. If you're over 70, you should consider a facility. If you become immobile and we have to take care of you, it'll be the end of the world for us. True. So, how about moving into a facility from now? That would take care of our troubles, right? That's better for you too, right, Lenora? I can't believe how they treat me. This is how Johnny and his wife have always been, only thinking about themselves. Don't decide on a facility for me. I'm not that old yet. To say that yourself. Once you're over 70, heaven is right in front of you. There's no need to pretend to be young. Their awful comments about facilities and heaven weigh heavily on my heart. But there's an angelic presence that lifts my spirits. Dad, Mom, don't say such terrible things to Grandma. Why are you here? You said you were going out to play with friends. My friend had something come up, so I couldn't make it. More importantly, apologize to Grandma, properly. This girl is my granddaughter, Ashley, a 17-year-old high school student. Unlike Johnny's family, she's just so honest and good-hearted. Yeah, I'll apologize. Sorry, Lenora. I'll try to be nicer from now on. Mom, that's not how you apologize. Say it properly. Ashley, it's okay. Thank you for saying that. She's such a caring child, really. In contrast, these two, glancing to the side, Johnny was far from apologizing, looking proud, while Megan had an unsatisfied look on her face. Then Ashley urged Johnny's family to head back. Sorry, Grandma. I'll come visit again. With that, Johnny's family left. The next day, after finishing breakfast and cleaning the house, the doorbell rang. Good morning, Ashley. You're early today. When I opened the door, there was Ashley. Good morning, Grandma. I'm about to meet some friends, but I wanted to see you first. Since she was little, Ashley frequently visited me like this. Take care, dear. Yeah, I will. I'll come back later. Seeing Ashley's energetic self gives me energy too. All right. With renewed vigor, I was about to resume cleaning, when the doorbell rang again. Just a moment, please. Rushing to the door, I found Johnny and his wife already trying to enter the house. You two, at least say something before entering. It's startling when you come in without a word. It doesn't matter. More importantly, was Ashley here just now? Johnny and his wife entered without hesitation, then plopped down on the sofa. Give us some of that thing, too. It's not fair that Ashley gets special treatment. They were probably referring to the coffee I make when Ashley visits. I've always loved coffee, started making it from beans, and now even neighbors request it. Ashley loves the coffee too, and always drinks it when she visits. I sighed and said, Wait a bit. As I started grinding beans in the kitchen, I heard an electronic sound from behind. Turning around, I saw Johnny and his wife at the table with their mobile phones, but nothing else unusual. Puzzled, I tilted my head. What are you doing? Hurry up with that thing. Lenora, aren't you done yet? I'm thirsty. Concerned about the earlier sound, but with Johnny and his wife hurrying me, I resumed grinding. Then Megan said in a disdainful tone, Lenora is so plain, isn't she? What's fun about grinding beans? I don't get it. Oh, maybe it's practice for when you go to a facility? Ew, I don't want to drink coffee you practiced making. Megan's condescending tone was new to me, and I felt a dislike for her for the first time. Then Johnny added in a similarly condescending tone. Indeed, it's unbelievable to serve such things to your own son and daughter-in-law. When did my mom become such a person? Getting old is so cruel. I feel very sad. Johnny's mocking tone was something I had never heard before, and Megan continued with her nauseating remarks. Their behavior felt like a performance by third-rate actors, almost terrifying in its insincerity. But instead of stopping, the two of them continued. My mom's gone downhill. She seems to have dementia, not knowing what she's saying or doing. How did it come to this? Maybe it'd be better if she just went to the next world already. But knowing Lenora, she'll probably cling to life. Why do I have to be spoken to like this? What's going on with you two? Stop it already! However, they were so engrossed in their mobile phones that they didn't even hear me. Then, suddenly, Johnny and his wife stood up, grabbed their bags, and left the house as if nothing had happened. Their incomprehensible behavior sent a chill down my spine. What's going on? I thought about consulting someone, but how could I explain their behavior? I spent a sleepless night, troubled by my thoughts. But the next day, Johnny and his wife returned. The memory of yesterday made me unsure of what to say. Then, from behind them, Ashley suddenly appeared. What's wrong, Grandma? Ashley was with them. Not wanting to worry my beloved granddaughter with my troubled face, I acted as usual. Would you like something to drink? I want Grandma's coffee. Alright, how about you two? But Johnny and his wife just sat down with sullen faces, saying nothing. Ashley looked puzzled at her parents' behavior. Without understanding why they remained silent, I prepared homemade coffee. Here you go. Ashley eagerly grabbed the coffee. It's delicious. A day just doesn't start without Grandma's coffee. Contrasting Ashley's happy sipping, Johnny and his wife remained silent and expressionless. Even after Ashley finished, they didn't touch the coffee in front of them. It must have gone cold and lost its taste by then. Then Megan took a sip of the now cold coffee. Disgusting. That single word pierced my heart. Then, Ashley, we're leaving first. Huh? We just got here. Saying that, Johnny and his wife left quickly. Mom and Dad were weird today. Did something happen? I wonder. For the next 2 weeks, Johnny and his wife came here daily. They just ignored any attempts at conversation, fixated on their mobile phones. Why don't you say anything? Even when I tentatively asked, there was no response. Unable to bear the tension, I turned on the TV to distract from the uncomfortable silence. This routine repeated every time. By then, I had started to feel a sense of dread about their very presence. Then one day, something unexpected happened. It was in the evening, just as I was about to go out for groceries. I received a text message from Johnny. We're coming over. So soon? 5 minutes later, just like the text said, Johnny and his wife arrived. When I opened the door, there they were. But today, their behavior was different. Hello! Nice weather today, isn't it? We'll just come in. The two who had been ignoring me were now talking as if they were different people. This sudden change only intensified my fear of Johnny and his wife. Mom, could you make us some coffee? I'm really in the mood for your coffee today. Oh, that's not fair. Lenora, can I have some coffee too? Surprised by their sudden change, I nodded and started grinding the beans. While grinding, I glanced at them and saw they were chatting and laughing, a stark contrast to before. Then they started talking to me. I'll have black coffee. I'd like 3 sugars, please. They drank the coffee with a smile. Then suddenly, Megan said, Oh, I forgot. Hey, could you buy me a prepaid card for my mobile phone this month? Sure, I'll go to the grocery store with Mom. What? Me too? Johnny grabbed my arm and dragged me to the nearby grocery store. I didn't understand why I had to go, just to pay for a prepaid card. There's no way I don't know where it is. We finished the payment, and I thought we would go straight home. But then, Johnny said something unexpected. There are cherry blossoms in the nearby park. Want to go see them? Okay, but shouldn't Megan come too? Megan's not interested in cherry blossoms. So, we ended up going to see the cherry blossoms in the nearby park. I never expected Johnny to suggest that. Johnny's kindness, after being so cold before, heightened my fear and caution. But, as we walked in the park, the blooming cherry blossoms gradually eased my guard. They are beautiful. However, my caution returned when I noticed Johnny's behavior. He seemed uninterested in the cherry blossoms, kept checking his watch, and appeared to be keeping track of time. Shall we head back? Doubtful of Johnny, I got in the car and returned home. As we entered the living room, Welcome back, both of you! You must be hungry, right? Today, I've cooked up some pasta. Megan suddenly said. Megan cooking was unheard of before. Ignoring someone so much and then suddenly cooking? And it's not even 6 p.m. yet. This is clearly a sign of something. Oh wow, it looks delicious. Mom would think so too, Johnny commented. Indeed, the pasta on the table looked appetizing, but there was an indescribable eeriness about it. Too suspicious. As Megan urged us to sit down, Johnny said we should eat. Can we really eat this without any worry? Johnny and his wife are staring at us, as if urging us to quickly eat the pasta in front of us. What should I do? Then, at that moment, hello? That voice. Ashley? The sudden sound of Ashley's voice caused Johnny and his wife to panic and rush towards the entrance. Where's Grandma? I hear Ashley's voice. Ashley, why are you here? What do you mean, why? I always come around this time. But isn't it unusual for you two to be here at this hour? Why are you here? We thought we'd have dinner with Lenora for a change. Their panicked behavior was evident, but could such a thing really happen? Ashley's timing was incredible. Now's my chance. While Johnny and his wife went to Ashley, I quickly swapped Megan's pasta with mine. Then I sat back down, pretending nothing had happened, waiting for them to return. Soon, Johnny and his wife came back into the living room. Good! You waited for us, Lenora! We thought we'd eat together. By the way, where's Ashley? Ashley went shopping. We only had this for dinner, so we sent her to buy her own. That can't be right. There's food in the fridge. Sending her shopping makes it all the more suspicious. Shall we eat then? Yes, let's eat. Johnny and his wife were waiting for me to eat first, just like before. There must be something wrong. But it's okay. I swapped the pasta with Megan's, so there should be nothing wrong with this one. Here goes. I take a bite of the pasta. How is it, Mom? How is what? You know, the taste. It's all about the taste, right? Trying to play it off humorously, Johnny and his wife also started to eat. It looks delicious, right? While saying this, they kept holding their forks, not touching the pasta, and kept looking at me. I was too distracted by their behavior to focus on the pasta, but so far, it didn't feel odd. Feeling reassured, I continued eating, and Johnny and his wife, with puzzled expressions, finally began eating their own pasta. But at that moment, Megan's demeanor suddenly changed. Just as I thought. After secretly swapping her plate with mine, she foamed at the mouth after just one bite. Megan began to struggle and collapsed with her chair. I couldn't believe such a dramatic scene was unfolding before my eyes. Hey, Megan, are you okay? Stay with me! Megan, who ate the pasta meant for me, was now in serious trouble. Megan! Megan! Stay with me! Open your eyes! I immediately called an ambulance, and they arrived within 5 minutes. Megan was carried into the ambulance by the paramedics. The neighbors gathered around, wondering what had happened. The ambulance's arrival drew the nearby residents out of their homes. Seeing this, Johnny shouted, "Don't look! Stay back!" 10 minutes later, Megan was rushed to the hospital. As I watched the ambulance drive away, "Grandma, what happened? Did someone get hurt?" Ashley, well, actually... I explained everything to Ashley, who had just returned from shopping, and her response was astonishing. She got what she deserved. After all, it could have been you in that ambulance. What do you mean? She beckoned me inside, and we went back into the house. Pointing to a certain spot in the living room, she said, "See this? It's a camera. A small one, hidden by Mom." A hidden camera? But why? Here's what happened. Recently, Johnny and his wife had become obsessed with filming videos, capturing anything they found amusing and posting it on social media. It started with harmless prank videos, but as they gained popularity, they wanted more attention, leading to increasingly outrageous actions. So, ignoring me and making snide comments. They were all for their videos! Remember the mobile phones on the table? That's what they used to record. Their ultimate idea was to film someone in distress, thinking it would bring more attention, and they targeted me, their mother-in-law. How awful! What were they trying to do? This is it. Ashley produced some chili peppers. Chili peppers? What about them? They crushed a bunch of these and put them in your pasta. The plan was to film you suffering after eating it. That's terrible. Anger welled up inside me at the thought of them going so far for fame. And Johnny was just as guilty for not stopping it. But one thing puzzled me. I did understand the plan to make me suffer with spicy food, but why did Megan foam at the mouth and collapse? Ashley then shared another shocking fact. She's allergic. Megan had a severe chili pepper allergy. She had fainted before from eating food with chili peppers in it, and had avoided them ever since. Megan's reaction to eating the pasta now made sense. That night, Johnny returned from the hospital and told me Megan would be hospitalized for a week. He blamed me for everything. Hearing this, Ashley interjected. Blaming others as an adult makes no sense. Doing such horrible things, you're no longer dad or mom, just painful strangers. Johnny, unable to respond to his daughter's words, left the house in a daze. I then told him, I won't say much. I'm cutting ties with you two. Don't come here again. If you do, I'll call the police immediately. Watching him leave, Ashley exclaimed, Grandma, you're so cool. Thank you. We high-fived. Later, when Megan was discharged and learned that I had cut ties with them and that Ashley had left home, she went into a frenzy. Johnny panicked and called the police. The officers arrived in 10 minutes and took Megan, who was still in a hysterical state, away. With Megan gone, Johnny hastily packed his belongings and left the apartment. His current whereabouts are unknown. Megan, still unable to calm down after being taken by the police, was admitted to a psychiatric facility, where she remains. Grandma, I'm off! Take care, do your best. Yes! It's been a year since then. Ashley left her parents and now lives with me. Today, she begins her life as an independent woman and a working adult. Being able to witness Ashley's growth up close is a joy beyond compare. I'm confident that the rest of my life will be brighter and more enjoyable.
Should I go to the reunion or not? I ponder, holding an invitation postcard in my hand. Still undecided, my husband Damien asks, and I hum in response. There are people I really don't want to see, but also people I absolutely want to catch up with. I'm Michelle, 50 years old, living with Damien, who's 7 years my senior, and our college sophomore daughter, Caroline. Recently, an invitation to my high school reunion arrived. Back in high school, my family was fairly well off. My parents, who valued education, sent me to a prestigious private school. I loved studying and consistently ranked at the top of my class. But there was Justina, a classmate who saw me as a rival and picked fights with me for no reason. Both of Justina's parents were doctors, and she came from a family of high achievers. She always had a group of followers around her, and she exuded an air of authority. From the start, I had zero interest in Justina's bragging about her family's background. Because I found her annoying and brushed her off, I ended up on her blacklist of people she disliked. And to make matters worse, I always outperformed her academically, which seemed to infuriate her the most. She and her clique would look down on me, but I was too busy with my studies to care. Everything changed during my senior year. My dad suddenly disappeared. My mom wouldn't give me the details, but I knew it involved another woman. He took all our savings and vanished without a trace. Since my mom's main source of income had been my dad, it became impossible to cover living expenses and the high tuition fees on her income alone. Somehow, Justina got wind of my situation and took the opportunity to taunt me. "Did your dad run off with another woman?" "That's none of your business." "Oh, but it is. We're classmates. I'm just worried." "Can you even afford to stay in school now? You must be too poor to focus on your studies." Her fake concern was transparent as she and her clique smirked and relished my discomfort. "Do you want me to ask my dad to help you out financially?" "I don't need your help. Leave me alone." Her words dug into my already fragile emotional state. I was angry at my dad and anxious about the future, and I couldn't focus on my studies, which had been my lifeline. My mom managed to keep us afloat by dipping into her savings. Despite searching everywhere, we never found my dad. Seeing my mom struggle, I decided to drop out of school just before summer break. I felt I couldn't burden her with my problems, so I never cried in front of her. "Miss Hannah, I've decided to leave school." I first shared my decision with Miss Hannah, who had been a great support since my life turned upside down. "I don't know what to do now. All I've ever done is study. It feels like all my hard work has been for nothing." For the first time, I broke down in tears. Miss Hannah comforted me, saying, "There's no such thing as a wasted experience in life. You can always turn into something positive. If you're ever struggling, come talk to me." Her support was invaluable to me at the time. The sense of security that I felt knowing that there was someone with whom I could whisper and cry was an irreplaceable emotional support for me at that time. Later, Miss Hannah moved abroad after getting married. We kept in touch through postcards and letters for a few years, but eventually lost contact due to our busy lives. Yet, I still think of her and she remains an important person to me. Now it seems Miss Hannah will be attending the reunion during a visit back to the country. I could see Miss Hannah if I go to the reunion, but Justina might be there too. But the desire to see Miss Hannah won out, and I decided to attend. The day of the reunion arrived. The venue was a fancy restaurant. I arrived a bit late, and the reunion was already in full swing. Everyone was chatting with old classmates. Scanning the room, I noticed an elegant woman with beautiful gray hair at the center of the crowd. It was Miss Hannah. Just as I was contemplating whether to approach her, a voice I recognized and wished I hadn't rang out. "Well, well, if it isn't Michelle!" Darn it. Caught off guard, I turned to see Justina, still as flamboyant as ever, decked out in gaudy makeup and flashy jewelry. "Playing coy? Oh, maybe dropping out made you forgetful." Justina approached me, her tone as condescending as ever. "Look, I didn't come here to see you. Excuse me." Feeling nauseated, I turned to leave, but she grabbed my arm and said, "Wait, it's been a while. Let's catch up." Reluctantly, I found myself seated at a corner table with her. "So, what have you been up to since you dropped out?" I've been working part-time jobs.
How resilient. I would have been crushed. Maybe you were always destined to be poor.
What are you talking about?
So where did you work?
Various places. Restaurants, convenience stores. Eventually, I moved out into the apparel industry.
Wow, uncharted territory. And you, in fashion? Are you sure about your taste? I always shop at Brand D.O. My husband owns a luxury store, you know.
I didn't even want to talk, but her forcefulness made me respond. Her entourage cheered her on. I didn't want to waste my precious time with Miss Hannah on this nonsense. Just as I was about to stand up and leave, she asked,
By the way, did you ever find your dad?
Her abrupt question made me freeze. No, I stopped looking.
Well, let me fill you in.
What?
Your dad moved from place to place after running off. He tried to start anew in Anchorage, but the woman left him. Now he's living a lonely life.
My head spun with this sudden information. How do you know all this? Justina smirked.
Because the woman he ran off with was set up by my dad. I asked him to ruin your family.
I was stunned. What are you saying? My voice trembled.
I arranged for a woman to seduce your dad. I never thought he'd actually disappear, though.
Why would you do such a thing?
Because you were an eyesore.
You ruined my family and my life for that?
Look, your dad chose to leave. If you're going to blame someone, blame him.
I was speechless. Seeing my silence, a triumphant Justina continued.
But hey, I saw in the directory that you changed your last name. You got married, right? Good for you. So, who's the lucky guy? Probably some poor sap, huh? You do have that poor vibe.
Feeling defeated, I could only sit in silence.
Hey, why don't you have your husband pick you up today? I'm curious to see who he is.
Unable to bear Justina's mocking laughter, I stood up and rushed out. I should just go home. That's what I was thinking as I headed from the exit when I heard, "Michelle!" I turned around to see Miss Hannah's warm smile. "Miss Hannah!" I found myself crying again in front of her. Miss Hannah and I sat on a bench outside and talked. "I'm sorry for crying as soon as I saw you." "Don't be. I'm just happy to see you. Actually, I requested that you be invited." "Really? I never got an invitation before because I dropped out." "I was worried you might not come, but I'm so glad you did." "I came because I heard you would be here." Miss Hannah listened as I updated her on my life. Talking to her made the crushing feelings from earlier disappear. I thought about telling her what I'd heard from Justina, but I didn't want to ruin this wonderful time. "I have to go soon." "I'm sorry for taking up your precious time." "Don't be. I was looking forward to this." Miss Hannah's smile gave me the same sense of comfort and strength as it always had. After saying goodbye, I returned to the venue with renewed determination. I quickly approached Justina, who was still chatting with her entourage.
"Back already? I thought you'd run off."
"You said you wanted to meet my husband. He's here to pick me up, so I'll introduce you."
"How exciting! My husband is about to arrive too. We should introduce them."
Outside, our husbands were already talking.
"Sorry to keep you waiting. Michelle, this is my husband Drake.
He owns a brand shop. Before she could finish, Drake interrupted.
Wow, you're Damien's wife? You're as elegant and beautiful as I'd heard.
Wait, President? Justina was stunned. Drake, who runs one of the companies that sells Damien's brands, introduced himself and thanked Damien. Drake runs one of Damien's brand name sales companies. Damien spoke to Justina, who was froze in disbelief.
Sorry for the late introduction. I'm Damien Owen of D.O. Company.
D.O. Company? As in the brand D.O.? Justina's eyes widened.
Yes, D.O. is our main brand.
Justina was flustered, and I couldn't help but smile. So, are you satisfied now?
I'm surprised you're a CEO's wife. And what a wonderful husband you have.
Her voice trembled, perhaps trying to hide her agitation with a strange laugh. Thank you. Sorry he's not the poor husband you were expecting.
The poor husband I was expecting?
Drake looked puzzled.
Stop, don't say weird things. It was a joke.
Oh, was it? So when you said I smelled poor, that was a joke too?
Stop! I said it was a joke.
Justina's panic was anything but ordinary.
Hey, Justina, did you really say that to Michelle? That's not something you can just joke about.
It's not like that. We were drinking, and it was just the mood from our school days. Justina tried to desperately smooth things over. So was it also just the mood when you sabotaged my family by setting my dad up with another woman? My cold voice froze the atmosphere.
What did you just say?
Even Drake's voice was trembling. I will pursue. Justina has been targeting me since school, making my life miserable. Because of her, my family fell apart, and I had to drop out of high school.
Is this true?
Drake looked uneasy.
Drake, it's not like that. Yes, Michelle's dad did run off with another woman, but I had nothing to do with it.
Really? You just confessed to me that you orchestrated the whole thing.
That was a joke. I couldn't possibly do something like that.
Despite her attempts to cover it up, Drake was visibly shaking with anger.
As I said, this isn't something you can just joke about. Apologize to Michelle right now.
Drake! Drake interrupted Justina's excuses.
Michelle, I'm really sorry for the discomfort Justina has caused you at this reunion. Justina, apologize properly.
I'm sorry. Seeing their reactions, I looked at Damien for guidance. Well, both of you, the comments were indeed inappropriate, but perhaps the alcohol got the best of you. You've apologized, so, Michelle, can we let this go? If Damien says so.
Thank you, Damien. Michelle?
Drake looked like he was about to cry. Justina wouldn't even look our way. Was she struggling to contain her anger?
Why don't we go check out some Dio clothing? I think we have something that would suit Justina.
Justina's face lit up. She's a perfectly fine person.
Really? Right now? Is that okay? We're past closing time, but it's our shop, so it's fine.
And so we found ourselves in a special room on the second floor of the D.O. flagship store.
Justina, why don't you try something on here? Drake, would you like to see our new collection? Michelle will show you.
Neither of them had any idea this was a trap.
How does it look?
Alone with Damien in the fitting room, Justina flirtatiously asked.
It suits you perfectly. It's like it was made for you.
Damien whispered into her ear.
Oh, you're good at this. I'm flattered.
Justina moved closer.
How about dinner sometime? Would that be for the four of us? Oh, I wouldn't mind if it's just the two of us.
That wouldn't be fair to Drake, would it?
I don't care about Drake. He's nowhere near as charming or successful as you.
Justina had completely fallen into our trap. Just like Michelle said. Damien signaled that it was time to reveal the truth.
What?
Justina was stunned. At that moment, Drake and I entered the fitting room. Justina, clearly startled, quickly moved away from Damien, but it was obvious they had been close. Ignoring that, I said, "You look great in that outfit, although it's a total fail as a product."
What? A fail?
It's flashy but lacks elegance. I've decided it's not up to the DO brand standards, but it really suits you.
How rude! And what do you mean you've decided?
I'm the person in charge of the DO brand.
What? You're in charge? Michelle, poor as she is in charge of a famous brand? You must be joking.
Justina was so shocked that she forgot who was around her and started yelling. That's when Drake shouted,
"The one who's lost it is you!"
Drake's yell echoed throughout the room.
Drake!
"How dare you! Everything you did in school was true, and now you're brazenly trying to seduce Damien?"
What? What are you talking about?
I approached the flustered Justina and showed her my phone screen.
A call?
Her eyes turned from dots to lines. "Drake and I heard your entire conversation with Damien." Justina paled even more as I continued. "I've heard about your bad behavior with men since high school, stealing other people's boyfriends and dumping them. Seeing you today, I knew you'd do the same."
You tricked me. You said it was all settled and led me on.
Justina seemed to want to say she was seduced by Damien.
"That's a misunderstanding. Isn't it natural to complain and entertain our guests?"
Damien calmly replied.
"Exactly. I clearly heard Justina trying to seduce Damien and insulting me."
But setting this up as a trap isn't fair.
Now's my chance for payback. Remember what you told me? Even if I started it, you're the one who took the bait. If you're going to blame someone, blame yourself." I threw her own words back at her. She was red-faced and speechless.
"Damien, Michelle, I'm really sorry for all this. I'll make it up to you later."
Drake apologized deeply and grabbed Justina's arm.
"Get ready for a divorce."
What? Wait, Drake, wait!
As Justina's voice faded, Damien and I exchanged smiles. A few days later, Drake came over to apologize and fill me in on what happened next. Justina had apparently begged him not to divorce her, crying her eyes out, but it turned out she had multiple affairs, leading to the divorce being finalized. She even turned to their adult children for support, but they had known about her infidelity for a while and decided to cut ties with her. Desperate, she reached out to her family and siblings, only to be told that they didn't need a disgrace in their prestigious family, and she was turned away. She sought help from her circle of friends, but no one was willing to lend a hand now that she was broke. She's also being sued for infidelity, and her savings won't last long. As for what kind of impoverished life Justina will lead from now on, I couldn't care less. And as for us, Damien, we've got messages from Caroline.
"Oh, they came in?"
The messages were filled with updates and seemed cheerful. There were also lots of pictures attached.
"It's good to see her surrounded by nice people."
Miss Hannah is in the pictures too. Our daughter Caroline is spending her college summer break doing a homestay in England. And guess what? She's staying at my old mentor Miss Hannah's house.
This handsome young man is Miss Hannah's grandson and a classmate of Caroline's. They seemed to get along. Damien seemed a bit uneasy as I happily shared this. I might have to make a business trip to England next week. Wait, isn't that abusing your position? It's for work. Then maybe I should set up an appointment with Miss Hannah to research everyday fashion in England. That's too specific. We both laughed. There's no such thing as a wasted experience in life. I remembered the words Miss Hannah once told me and realized that our current happiness exists because of our past struggles. No matter what happens in the future, we'll keep that in mind and keep moving forward.
She's more adorable than you, and makes me want to protect her. You know, men are creatures who want to protect the weaker sex, right? These were the smug words of my husband Dylan, when I confronted him about his affair that I had unfortunately witnessed. He kept making excuses, eventually brazenly admitting it. How could I possibly agree with him? There was no way I could nod in approval. Moreover, he had no intention of divorcing me or breaking up with his mistress. A marriage like this, with such a man, was unsustainable. I packed my bags and went back to my parents' house, pouring out my frustrations to my brother Chester. After listening to my story, Chester showed a broad smile. I see. Well, that's great. Great? About what? I yelled at him in disbelief. My brother's first reaction to hearing about my husband's affair was to say it was great. But Chester's smile never wavered, and I noticed a deep anger in his eyes, not matching his smile. I'm Lily, 31 years old. Dylan and I were colleagues at the same company. Since joining the company, we had consulted and supported each other in our work, becoming close friends capable of discussing anything. We went out for drinks together, gradually sharing not just work matters but personal ones too, deepening our bond. A few months later, after a company drinking party, Dylan confessed to me. He was bright, sociable, incredibly kind, and easy to talk to. I was attracted to him, so I didn't hesitate to say yes, and we started dating. While dating, we continued to consult each other about work and would go out for meals after work. Our relationship progressed smoothly. Both of us loved exploring different sceneries, so we often traveled on weekends and even went on overseas trips during long holidays. Spending more and more time with Dylan, I grew deeply attracted to him and eventually realized I wanted to be with him forever. During our 5th year at the company, Dylan proposed to me, surprisingly, in a fancy restaurant's private room. Opening the ring box, I remember I couldn't stop crying with joy. There was no reason to refuse, and I accepted his proposal without hesitation. We both loved scenic views, especially those of the ocean, where we had many memories, so we decided to have our wedding at a place with a view of the sea. Blessed with good weather, it was the best day. I loved my job and enjoyed discussing work with Dylan, so I intended to continue working at the same place even after we got married. However, working in the same environment as a couple became challenging, and I ended up transferring to a different branch, though my job duties didn't change much. 3 years into our marriage, we were still living happily as a couple. We would dine out a few times a month and go on trips several times a year. My relationship with Dylan's parents was also good, and we were leading a happy married life. To outsiders, we must have seemed like the perfect couple, and I felt the same. But that sentiment only lasted until this day. One day, with the next day being a day off, I had planned a leisurely dinner out with Dylan after work as usual. However, once my work was winding down, I received a message from Dylan. Sorry, I got invited to dinner by a client tonight. They've been really good to us recently, and I couldn't say no, so I can't make it to our dinner, he said. I felt lonely, but responded, Okay, can't be helped. I was really looking forward to the restaurant we picked, so let's go another day. Sure, I'll make it up to you. I'll be late tonight, so go ahead and sleep. Bye, he said. As I was getting ready to leave work, my phone rang. It was my friend Sharon. Hello. Hey, Lily.
Are you free tonight? Want to catch up over drinks? Perfect timing. Dylan just bailed on me for a client dinner, so I'm unexpectedly free. Sharon is my best friend. We're colleagues at the same company, though she works in a different department now. She gave a speech at my wedding and sometimes comes over to our house. Since she and Dylan were also batchmates and drinking buddies, we've hung out together several times, and it's always fun when the three of us meet. Like today, she would call me out of the blue, and we'd catch up over drinks whenever we could. We decided to meet at the nearest station to my house, so I left the office and headed there. I arrived quite early thanks to a timely train, but Sharon was already there waiting. Sorry to keep you waiting. No worries, I just got here myself. After exchanging a few words, we headed to the restaurant together. On the way home from the nearest station, there's a fairly large bustling district. We entered a restaurant just off the main street of this district. Raising our beers for a toast, we started with the usual updates. How have you been lately? Is Dylan doing well? Yeah, he's fine. Business as usual, I guess. Work has settled down a bit, so we're not as crazily busy. How about you, Sharon? Were you working around here today? Yes, exactly. This area is part of my territory, so I come here occasionally. On the contrary, I've been swamped with clients this month. I'm totally exhausted. At this rate, no guy will come near me. Sharon is the quintessential career woman. Attractive and stylish, but her straightforward personality and strong will seem to keep men at bay. After sharing our stories and motivating each other to keep going, we left the restaurant in the same enjoyable mood as always. The bustling area has such great atmosphere. Mind if we take a slow walk back to the station? Upon hearing Sharon's words, sure, let's walk off the alcohol a bit. I'll walk you to the station. So we decided to stroll through the busy streets on our way to the station. The conversation continued as we walked. Lily, you're lucky. You've got a great husband, and it seems like your married life is going well. Have you guys started thinking about having kids? Well, we really don't talk about it much. We both love our jobs, and I worry about work being affected if I get pregnant. We're thinking someday, but it's hard to find the right timing. As we were talking and walking, a certain restaurant came into view. It was the place where Dylan and I were supposed to dine tonight. The beautiful restaurant had glass walls, revealing a dimly lit interior. The orange chandeliers inside seemed deliberately set to a subdued brightness. Just as I was thinking that I'd like to visit this place next time, I saw a familiar figure. I stopped in my tracks. What's wrong? Unable to answer Sharon, my gaze was fixed on the restaurant. It was Dylan at a table inside, with a woman sitting across from him. She was younger than me, wearing a revealing outfit. Dylan had said he was dining with a client tonight, but this woman clearly didn't seem like someone from work. They were chatting and laughing together. Isn't that Dylan? What's going on? Sharon also noticed Dylan inside. I was too shocked to know what to do. Seeing my state, Sharon spoke up. Lily, maybe you should confront him and find out what's going on. Yeah, you're right. I took out my mobile phone from my bag and discreetly photographed Dylan with the unknown woman. As I calmed down, anger began to bubble up inside me. When Sharon and I reached the station, do you want me to confront him with you? It might be better to have two of us ask Dylan. He might tell the truth. She offered. Thanks, but it's a family matter. I need to handle this myself. I declined her offer, and we parted ways. On my way home, I struggled to suppress the growing anger and made it back to the house. About an hour after I arrived, Dylan came home. I'm back, he said. Welcome back. How was dinner with your client? Oh, it was tough. They wanted to go to a second place, and they drink a lot, but I think I made a good impression. Right after Dylan finished speaking, I showed him the photo on my mobile phone. Is this your client? She's quite young, and not exactly dressed for a business dinner. Did she change into this outfit to meet you? What? You were following me? Of course not. I was out with Sharon. We just happened to see you on our way back. Is this woman really a client? Which company does she work for to warrant such a fancy restaurant like that? Well, What, can't you answer? She's not someone you need to hide from me, is she? I'm sorry, Lily. Sorry? Are you cheating on me? Is this woman your mistress? Answer me.
Yes, she is.
I broke down in tears. Why? Why would you do this? I thought everything was fine.
It's your fault, Lily. You're always so busy with work. You take care of the house, but I wanted more attention from you. You're strong and independent, but she's cute and makes me want to protect her. I realized I enjoy being with her more than being with you.
I was shocked. Dylan no longer cared for me and clearly preferred his mistress. I wish he had said it was just a one-night stand, or purely physical. It would have been less painful. Unable to stay any longer, I gathered my essentials and left the house. Dragging my carry-on bag, I caught the last train home. The journey to my parents' house felt longer than usual. I don't remember what I thought about on the way. Maybe I was too hurt to think at all. Before I knew it, I was standing in front of my parents' house. I had a key, but since I hadn't called ahead, I rang the doorbell. It was my brother Chester who opened the door. Chester?
Hey, long time no see. What brings you here at this hour?
Chester is a workaholic. After graduating, he worked for a major corporation for 3 years before starting his own business. His company has been growing steadily, and he now employs dozens of people. He rarely comes home, and even missed my wedding due to an important business meeting. I had heard from my parents that Chester got married a year ago, but since there was no wedding ceremony, I had only briefly greeted his wife, so we didn't have a deep connection. It had been years since I last saw Chester. Chester, how are you doing? What about Mom and Dad?
Haha, what am I doing? Well, this is also my home. I finally got a long vacation, so I thought I'd come back and do something nice for Mom and Dad. They've actually gone on a trip right now, using the travel vouchers I gave them. Never thought I'd be the one house-sitting.
His cheerful personality hadn't changed. He might be a bit too carefree, but he's also dynamic. I imagined his employees must find it a comfortable place to work.
So, Lily, what brings you here at this time?
I was so surprised to see Chester that I forgot why I'd come back home. Sorry to drop in like this. I had some trouble at home and needed a place to stay for a while.
Of course, it's fine. Your room is still here. Come on in. Once you're settled, I'll make some coffee and you can tell me all about it.
I felt comforted by Chester's warmth. I decided to take a shower first to freshen up a bit. Though I felt a bit better, I couldn't calm down completely. The anger was still there. When I entered the living room, Chester was watching TV.
Feeling better? I'll make some coffee then.
After he turned off the TV and I sat down, I started telling him about everything that happened today while sipping my coffee. About how my marriage with Dylan had been going well so far, how we had a usual dinner plan, how Dylan canceled on me to dine with a client, the time I spent drinking with Sharon. Then showing him the photo on my mobile phone, I continued. On the way back from drinks, I saw Dylan and this woman at the restaurant we were supposed to go to. I confronted Dylan when he got home, and he admitted he was having an affair with her. He said he found her cuter and felt a need to protect her. I recounted everything through tears. Chester listened intently to my story, looking at the photo on my phone. When I finished, he looked up, and to my surprise, he said something I didn't expect. I thought Chester would comfort me, tell me to leave such a man, stand by my side. But instead, Chester, with a big smile, said,
Lily, that's great.
I impulsively stood up, slamming the table. Great? About what? I said, and retreated to my room. What was great about it? Why did Chester say that? Just thinking about it made me even angrier. I shouldn't have told him. I regretted telling Chester and laid down on the bed. I didn't want to go back to the house where Dylan was, so I stayed at my parents' house. Chester and I didn't talk much after that day. I commuted to work from my parents' house on weekdays, which took twice as long, and I was thinking about how difficult it would be to get divorced and ask for alimony. A week later, on the weekend, I was playing games on my mobile phone and enjoying a relaxed morning, when suddenly the doorbell rang. Who could it be? It was unusual to have visitors, so I headed to the front door. There, standing at the front door, was Dylan, apologizing to Chester. Why? Shouldn't he be apologizing to me instead of Chester? Then I heard Chester's voice.
Never thought the other guy would be you. I didn't know. I'm really sorry.
Dylan was still apologizing to Chester.
So Rachel is cuter and more worth protecting than Lily, huh?
Rachel? The only Rachel I know is Chester's wife. Confused, I listened as Chester continued.
Recently, I noticed Rachel acting restless and clearly hiding something from me. Her expression was off when I talked to her. I started suspecting infidelity. I was thinking about hiring a detective, but then Lily came home. It shocked me when Lily showed me a photo of her husband's affair, and the woman in it was Rachel. I was saddened to confirm the affair, but also shocked that the other person was family. You never know what might happen. This makes claiming compensation easier.
I was speechless. Dylan's mistress was Chester's wife, Rachel. The woman Dylan was dining with had heavy makeup, and I hadn't recognized her. It had been a long time since I'd seen Rachel, and she hadn't worn such heavy makeup before.
When Chester contacted me, I realized I had done something terrible. I promised to cut off all contact with Rachel. Please forgive me.
It seems Chester had contacted Dylan about the affair. Chester noticed me standing there.
Oh, Lily, good timing. Did you hear what we're talking about?
Yeah, most of it.
Great. Now we have information on Dylan and his mistress, Rachel. It'll be easy to claim compensation now. It's good you came home, Lily.
Chester said with a smile. That's what it meant. I finally understood the meaning behind Chester's words a week ago. Why he had said, "That's great." What was Chester's feeling at that time? He had spoken to me, but perhaps those words were also for himself. Thinking about Chester's feelings, I decided to divorce Dylan and claim compensation.
Lily, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I can't afford to pay any compensation.
I ignored Dylan's pleas for help.
I'll contact you with the details later. Be ready,
Chester said, then kicked Dylan out of the house. After that, Chester told Rachel they were divorcing and demanded compensation. Initially, Rachel resisted, but she acquiesced after discussing her affair with Dylan. I also filed for divorce and claimed compensation from Dylan. Having been already confronted by Chester, Dylan complied without resistance. The divorce was finalized when I received a call from my mother-in-law, Mary. Expecting to be scolded, I hesitantly answered, "I'm so sorry for what Dylan did." But she was apologizing. It seemed Dylan had blamed Rachel for the divorce, and Rachel blamed Dylan, leading to their breakup. Mary kept saying, "I'm sorry for my worthless son." She said it over and over again. She even mentioned she had disowned Dylan. Hearing this from my in-laws gave me a sense of closure. Now Dylan was disowned by his parents and left alone without anyone to rely on. I decided to start anew. Though Dylan was sending the compensation money monthly, one day he showed up at my parents' house, asking to reduce the amount.
Please, can you lower the compensation? I've quit my job and have no income.
That's not my problem. Do you understand how I feel after being cheated on? As long as my pain persists, I won't reduce the compensation. Leave now, I said, and sent him away. But he kept coming back week after week, begging to reduce the compensation. "The amount won't change no matter how many times you come. If you keep showing up, I'll call the police." I responded calmly. Dylan seemed to think I wouldn't really call the police. His demands escalated from reducing the compensation to stopping payments altogether, and even arrogantly suggesting reconciliation. When I started calling the police in front of him, he changed his tune and left in a hurry. The police advised me not to open the door anymore and to use a monitor-equipped intercom to avoid him. Apparently scared of the police, Dylan began bombarding me with lengthy emails and phone calls. I changed my email and phone number, which finally brought some peace. However, Dylan became a nuisance, showing up at my branch where I worked and trying to contact me through my colleagues. One day, Sharon contacted me. Working near Dylan's department at the head office, Sharon had been keeping a close eye on his current situation. Dylan's divorce from me had become public knowledge due to him enlisting colleagues' help, and his harassment was exposed when people saw him near my house during their commutes. Realizing nobody was on his side, feeling the awkward stares and attitudes, Dylan voluntarily left his job. He struggled to find employment afterward, eventually joining a company that turned out to be notoriously exploitative. Desperate, he even begged for the HR department of his previous company to let him return. but having abandoned all his responsibilities to resign, he found no place there. Rejected and unable to resign again, Dylan was living a hard life, starting work at the crack of dawn and staying until the last train, doing unpaid overtime. Regarding Rachel, she apparently reached out to Chester several times, hoping for reconciliation. However, Chester understood there was no love left. Like Dylan, Rachel had quit her job after her affair became known, sometime after the divorce. "I'll become poor at this rate, so I can't pay the compensation. Can we start over?" she pleaded with Chester. Focusing only on money, Chester realized she was after his wealth. When he refused to reconcile or reduce the amount, Rachel reportedly said she had no savings and couldn't pay, not even a single cent. Chester didn't back down and contacted her parents, who were unaware of the divorce, shocked and apologetic. They paid the compensation on her behalf. Rachel seemed to think this settled everything, but her parents, having only covered the cost temporarily, demanded repayment and were furious. She's now working on her parents' farm, enduring tough labor daily. After all this, Chester and I began communicating more frequently. We share updates on our lives and recent happenings, appreciating the value of family, which we hadn't done much before. Chester is still busy with work, but seems to be enjoying his life. It wasn't easy for me to recover quickly after that. Indeed, the shock of the infidelity and the change in my life circumstances due to the end of my marriage was stressful for me. However, with support from family, supervisors, colleagues, and friends, I've come to see it as a valuable experience. Currently, I'm not thinking about another marriage, and I'm enjoying my single life.